Public. There we go. We'll bring the Public Works meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Cindy,
Here.
Seth,
Here.
Todd,
Here.
and Andrew.
Here.
Okay, first period for public comment. Anybody online? Nate?
Got a few people online. If anyone wants to make a public comment, they can unmute and make their comment at this time. Think you're good, Todd.
All right, next, we'll go to approval of the committee minutes for September 23rd, 2025.
This is Seth, and I move that we approve the minutes from September 23rd, 2025 with no adjustments.
This is Cindy, I'll second.
All those in favor? Saying aye.
Aye.
Nays. I'm professional. Okay, number 4, review and approval of pay request number 2, Center Avenue project. Sarah?
Okay. This is a little bit messy because right as we were getting ready for today, I realized that there were 2 small things, but they were 2 things that I didn't want on the pay request. Sorry, trying to figure out whose screen I can see. So, there we go. Everything's in the wrong spot. So yeah, so I added some of my own numbers here so that we could make the correction, and then we'll get the mayor, the mayor and Jessica to sign the corrected version. So as I go through it, I'll show you what's going on here. Okay, so, as we always go through this, we look at like what's this request, and a good reference check is looking at like where our percent completes are. So we had 1 tree removal where we removed a tree stump, have some base material, nothing that's too terribly exciting here. Saw cutting asphalt, which obviously is part of the preparation process, and getting our inlet protection, which is our required erosion control measures. So this is one area that is something to note. In the bid, there was no removal item for removing concrete in the current roadway. And we have asphalt in the roadway, but we have underneath the asphalt concrete, and in more places than we expected. But also, this is kind of one of those things that happened because we were bidding so quickly. So if you remember, we were waiting for appropriations money. And so we were kind of waiting because we couldn't get our engineering. We didn't want to take it too far originally. And then we had to hurry up and go quickly. And so some of these things ended up getting not finished entirely. And so this is one of them. At our next meeting, which will be next week, we're going to bring a change order forward to make this correction and also correct some of the other things that we've changed. Like, for example, at Nelson's, where we don't have sidewalk, or the pavement markings that we've changed, or the fact that we're going to pave through with the asphalts instead of the concrete. So all those things that we sort of changed in the last little bit will come through next week. But for the interim, this is the quantity of concrete that they've removed. It's just, we're going to use a different line item for it because in the way that this is set up, it doesn't well account for what would be a common excavation cost, which would be deducted from the removals of the concrete. And so, long story short, I would say this is equitable for all parties, but it will be fixed and adjusted. So we shouldn't be at a 38% for something that's within the entire project at this point. And that's why, because we are going to have to adjust and have a line item that's more specifically for concrete removal in the roadway. Let's see what else we got on here. So we obviously put in sanitary in Center Avenue between Decker and Parkinson. And so we're seeing this is the installation of those sewer services. One of the things that I caught onto here was that this number, so typically what we've done in the past is had connect, like each service line has its own lump or has its own item, except Beerbecker changed how they approached it. They now put in a single lump sum item for all the connections in the entire project. And so we both didn't catch this, but they put quantity two. Well, when you have a lump sum, there's not a quantity two unless there's something like outside of what was the norm. And so we're removing that cost. So it'll be equal to 1. So there'll be a deduction of 1,200 here. The rest of it looks right. And then we obviously have the water main installation that has happened on Center Avenue. And we have the storm sewer. We also have that same sort of thing. Now we did have a change. Nelson's wanted to connect their storm drain to the storm sewer in a location that we didn't have it currently connected to before because it was close enough to their grate that we ended up putting it in. So this may be a number that we get like some sort of quantity more than 1 in the future, but we're taking this out for now. So this is the other part. So there's a total of $4,200 that's deducted from the final cost that we're going to look at today. But again, this one we may end up having some additional costs because they had a connection that was not currently listed on the plan. Let's see, and this is the storm sewer extension that we did. So we did alternate 2. In the original bid, we had 2 storm sewer alternates. This was one of them, and that was essentially right originally, or the current condition was that on Parkinson, there was storm sewer, but it was just at the 4 corners. It didn't go down the street, and we took it down, and we basically took it to basically mid-block, right where that driveway to go to the loading docks for Nelson's is. That was the addition, and so that they did the work there. The only other thing is our deed, or excuse me, let's see, there shouldn't be anything there. Yeah. The only other thing is, as we mentioned, that stored materials. So they purchase the materials, they have them on site, and as we get them installed, they take them off of the total cost. And so this 34,364 or 69, excuse me, is the fact that they've installed the materials, and so now they're deducting them from their price. Which is why, if you go up to the main page, you'll see this is a little confusing. Even the DNR was like, wait a minute, where's the change order? And it's like, well, there's no change order. This was stored materials. It's just the way that they've listed it here. This is the deduct. And so as you can see, our number of net change by change orders will just keep going to 0, except for when we actually have a true change order. So these are the numbers that would deduct that 4,200. So we've got our total completed to date should be 5,508.13 and 50 cents. That changes the retainage because it's always 55% of the total until you have 50% of the project. And then obviously that changes those because one minus is from the other. And then the current payment due on this pay request is $171,900.40. So we're looking for approval for this. I can give you a little bit of update where we're at on that is that we had string line put up this morning. Hopefully they can pour concrete tomorrow and do the curb and gutter on the project. If all goes well and they can do that, Matthew just let us know that they could be here as soon as next week. So things are moving along.
Roll call, please. Right?
Well, we got.
Oh, shoot.
Miss Cindy, I'll make a motion that we approve pay request number 2 for the Center Avenue project with the changes that you mentioned, and good catch, Sarah, on that stuff.
This is AJ. I'll second.
Oh, I didn't say the amount, $171,900.40.
Thanks, Cindy.
Okay, Steph,
Aye.
Todd, Andrew.
Aye.
And Cindy.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. I should move screens for you, Todd.
All right, next, number 5, we'll update and changing bank account names from CWF to SWL loans.
Okay, so I put this on as an update because I needed to have this completed for last week, and I did not realize we weren't having a meeting last week that got moved to this week. I probably was told, I didn't remember. And I actually didn't realize it needed to be completed as early as it did. So we had an old bank account that we had previous clean water funds put into the bank account. And all that really needs to happen is it needs to go into a non-interest bearing bank account. And what I'm talking about is the payment for the pay requests on Center Avenue. Sorry, let me back up. When we get our first draw on October 22nd, it needs to go into a non-interest bearing account. All of our accounts are pretty much interest bearing, except for there are a few that like the USDA requires non-interest bearing, and then the Clean Water Fund and Safe Drinking Water Loan. Our debt reserves are able to be interest bearing, so I couldn't use an existing account that is being used. So I found an old bank account that we still had active. That's a non-interest bearing account, but it was just kind of laying dormant. I never closed it because I was kind of just wanting to keep it open just in case. Well, guess what? Now I can use it. So I just changed the bank account name to the Clean Water Center Street CWFs and SDWL. What will happen is the money will go in there, and then I will immediately that day transfer it into our checking account to cover the checks I've already run. Already done. So yeah, I'm trying to hurry you guys, sorry. So yeah, it's just a formality, and I didn't put approval on there because again, I needed to have it done, but I wanted to make a record of it.
Thank you.
Is there any questions?
Follow that.
All right, thank you. The next, construction project updates.
All right. We're doing good for time. So I'm going to try to be a little bit more thorough. So as we mentioned, Center Avenue is moving pretty quickly. It was like dormant for a while, and then all of a sudden it started picking up with everybody wanting to pave and do things like that. So we'll see how tomorrow goes. It looked like it was going to rain overnight. They can deal with a little bit of rain, but they're not going to pour if it's pouring. So then that's going to basically tie up paving, right? So like we're waiting for paving. We're also waiting for Excel to move their poles. They're actually replacing their poles. So that's been really nice, is there are a few of those poles already that are in pretty bad shape, and they'll update the transformers and do all the updates on that electrical on Center Avenue instead of just shifting them, which is what we originally thought. So hopefully everything falls in line and they get as much paving as they can done. The other part they need to do is the aprons for the driveway so that when they come through with the path, they can pave right up against it, because typically you want to pave last, have the concrete in, and then they can make a better joint like seam. So we'll see. And everyone is waiting for Matthew to show up, and it's all kind of coordinating. So the other part of that is they've been waiting for Matthew to finish the salt shed. So they've got the salt shed pretty much ready to go, and they've been waiting to pave that. So Matthew likes to do things in groups. The other thing is sort of unrelated to us, but would also be Parkview Manor. They're waiting for Matthew to show up there. So they're hopefully going to be coming in next week and doing all of these things, as well as some patches that we have on the utility side. And then in front of City Hall here, finally, we'll get that finished. So we got the concrete done and we'll be ready for them to pave. So this one, I don't even know if we should be talking about landfill in updates or construction updates. This kind of straddles both concepts, but we could just move on if you want, and then it's clean. There's no question.
Yeah, we'll move on.
Number 7.
Oh, I gotta put my glasses on. Street and utility department updates.
Where's that wheel?
All right, so landfill. We are getting ready to submit our response to the DNR about what we are going, where we're at and what we're going forward with. So I should be getting the draft tomorrow. And essentially, we're just, Mike was like, everything was like so tight and buttoned up until you took that sample on Friday, and now it doesn't make sense. So he had to redo everything more or less, or at least re-explain everything. We're still getting that change of pressure within the landfill. So sometimes it's negative and sometimes it's positive, and that should just not be happening. It should either be always positive or not, like zero. Negative is a weird thing in a landfill. Anyway, so
There
we're
was a-
struggling with that. And we are trying to get everything together, the information. And so Mike was going to come today, and then he's decided that he would change plans. And what he's going to do is sort of like what we did originally with MG&E. They have basically like a giant drill bit. They drill holes into the ground, and then they put like a probe down that samples, and just to get an idea of not putting monitoring wells in, but getting an idea what's going on around. Because what the DNR continues to ask us is, well, what about the rest? Right? Like, we've been focused on a very specific area, and well, what's the impacts elsewhere? And so that was sort of his way of thinking that we could get some information, just get an idea without having to drill monitoring wells, because that cost is much higher.
Sarah, if you don't mind, what was different on Friday? It was
Well,
completely
just
off
Friday.
the range.
It's happens all the time, but we've had, so since the beginning of monitoring, we have some days that are positive and some days that are negative, and some days we have gas and some days we don't have gas, or varying levels of gas. And in the summer, we had many more days that were positive, but it started trending so that there was less gas just in general. And there's two things that we've been doing. One is that not just that we've been doing, two things that have been happening. One is like the general atmospheric pressure just generally is getting higher. And that could be causing less pressure, like more pressure internally and less pressure coming out of the landfill. But then also we've been doing our vacuuming. Like, we've been doing this sort of like mini vacuum scenario, because in the grand world of landfills, you have passive ventilation systems and then you have active ventilation systems. And that's really where the DNR would like to see us move next, is to like a full-blown skid blower system. And so we're trying to figure out, like, is that really useful? And we've been seeing a trend downward, more negative pressures, less gas in general over the last few months. And so we had a streak where we were seeing a lot of negative numbers. And Mike was making assumptions based on that about like the venting helping essentially, and the pressures helping. But then on Friday, we ended up having high gas again at higher numbers at our one sampling point that isn't the one that we're pulling gas out of. So he's like, well, that just threw my my nice, pretty contained trend, to a different thing. And we've been looking at what makes Viroqua unique, right? And like what things are happening. Some of like, we have a certain type of topography. We have low groundwater tables. Like, are these things impacting what we're seeing there? So yeah, because we've never been always high. Like, we don't always see gas. It's pretty much consistently across the whole of the landfill, even the vents, the probes that are on the north of the landfill. The other thing is our venting, but also our passive venting would be as a reason why things were trending better, right? So we're still working through those abnormalities that are Viroqua. So yeah.
Was it, I'm trying to remember Friday, did it go from hot to cold on
So
that
we've
date?
been looking
Is there
at
anything
temperature,
that's
we've been looking
consistent?
at barometric pressure, and we've been looking at wind direction. it seems that when there's some more westerly winds, but again, it's the trick is like we're not ever able to get a super clean definition of that, right? So like, well, we see some things happening and it seems to correlate. There's never like a truly clean correlation, and probably because there's more than one thing happening. And so we're like working through that. I think if anything, to me, I feel better about things that we're seeing some variability, because if we were just having constant gas readings that were high, that were constantly under pressure, you would know that there's just like this machine running, not machine running, but like the biological activity is just very, very active, and it seems to not necessarily always give us the same readings. So yeah, that's been part of the challenge of this. And I would say it goes back to Mike's desire to not necessarily go like the full meal deal right off the bat, because it doesn't necessarily show to us currently that it could be the only way to go.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mike's gonna come out next week and start doing some of that more investigative work, and that hopefully will help answer some of the questions that the DNR has about, like, is there other areas adjacent to the landfill that we need to look at? Let's see, other street stuff. It's for the first time in a long time, we have all the trees that were in our tree bed are planted. I give the guys kudos on that one because they got that all in the ground at a good time. For those of you that are anxiously awaiting hearing about the leaf vac, because it seems to always be a hot topic, they should have it out next week. Mark had it in getting prepared last week. It's kind of tricky because there's not a lot of leaves on the ground yet. But we also have a newer crew at it. Like, there's not the same people aren't doing the same thing. And it's probably going to be one of those scenarios where they all start falling very quickly together, because we're already, you know, mid-October. Oh, let's see. A lot of the other stuff that I want to talk about is going into the utility. Oh, which is the same agenda item. Okay. I'll just keep going and then hand it over. We're still doing good for time. Okay. Oh, so the other terrible time we're having is with our wells. We have not been flushing, if anybody has noticed. We have it out that we've been flushing because we were planning on flushing, and then right before we started flushing, so like last week and a half, I guess, we had well 5 go down again, that same ground fault that we had 8 months ago. Should not happen. So we've been trying to figure out what's going on. So we had CTW, which is our well people, out. They came out. We didn't pull the pump motor right away because we wanted to see everything as is. They came out to sort of their initial once over. Then Franklin is the motor company. They had a guy come out that does like troubleshooting to try to help see. He also wanted it in the ground before he came, try to help see what was going on. They decided that the motor was shot again and that no one can tell what's exactly happening. So we pulled it out yesterday and today. So what they basically, some of the things that we've been trying to explore, and I have learned more about electrical parts of wells than I've ever in my whole time working. And these things are really complicated because there's a couple things happening, right? So there's the energy that's coming in from the grid. There's a phase monitor that monitors the phases that are coming in. There's a surge protector monitoring and protecting the system from a surge. Then there's the VFD, which is like essentially a system that controls the electrical output, and it's trying to make the energy that the pump, the motor wants to see. And so then there's all sorts of things within the VFD that are also doing the same sort of monitoring and dampening and trying to harmonize everything, sending it down the well. And then once it goes in there, there's obviously everything that's happening with the motor, and our well is deep, right? It's set like 500 feet down. So there's all the stuff that happens with the fact that we're sending the electrical all the way down and signals back up. And then we also have the generator and how it plays into it, and how the transfer switches go on and switching over. And it's just like everybody's trying to figure out, and the grounding. That's another whole thing, is making sure that we have how we're grounding and how that's affecting the system, and the well itself is being aground, right? And so I have had more conversations that are just like super complicated about how this is all working. And normally this is not I mean, it's complicated, but we don't get into how complicated it is, right? We get into like, put the motor down the well, how's the pump running? And so CTW and us, we are all like, we don't want to just put this thing down the well again. Like, one, this is a big deal. And two, like, we don't understand why it's doing what it is. So right now they're dissecting our motor to try to figure out what happened last time. So last time it like fried inside the internal parts of the motor in the windings. I don't know if you remember seeing pictures of it. So they're trying to figure out what's going on. They did see some discoloration on the outside of it, which could show heat damage. So then they were talking to us about that. But the way that our well is set up is that there's an enormous amount of water moving past the pump, or the motor, which is what it's supposed to do. That's how it cools. Anyway, long story short, we're sort of just trying to figure out how we do not get ourselves into the same situation again. And so we've got motor company involved, we've got a very highly esteemed electrical engineer involved, and everybody is trying to piece together what exactly is happening here. So I do not have good answers for you yet, but what I do is that there are a lot of very smart people trying to figure out what is happening, but it is strange.
Seems to be almost the same fail scenario.
Well, it appears to be.
Yeah.
It's the same fault that happened. And we don't know yet that it's failed in the same way. That's how they have to take everything apart. But it's not looking promising. And no one can really explain why it's happening. So last time it failed, it was a different motor brand. So we switched motor brands to Franklin because they're just sort of like better vetted and provide more on-site technical assistance. And they're even unsure of what's happening, but it does appear to be the same type of issue. Yeah. So that's one wonderfully fun thing that we're dealing with. At the same time there, we're also think that we have in the transfer switch, because there's phase monitors coming in and there's phase monitors on the transfer switch. We think that we're getting a transfer switch in the phase monitor, a phase monitor in the transfer switch that's wearing and needs to be replaced. Because what happens is when the generator, when the transfer switch sees power it doesn't like, it's shutting everything off, which it's supposed to do, but it's not turning the generator. So we have to go in, flip the switch and start the generator, and then it's running. And it works. But so we got the second issue at well 5 that we're trying to work out. Meantime, well 6 is operating, but well 6, we are not able to run the generator there yet. And we had, if you remember, we had Total Energy Systems come out and they looked at it, ran it under the load bank and said everything looked good at well 6 for the most part. We had a battery that we changed. And then we were trying to figure out, well, why is it not letting it run off the generator? And so we've been going back and forth about, is it the VFD, the VFD, is it the generator? And the generator people are saying it's absolutely not the generator, but we're working through things. So we got to do some troubleshooting there, but we're not doing it yet because we don't want to mess what we have at least currently operating there, which is the fact that, well, 6 is running under normal power operations, it's running. And so we are going to leave that one until we have well 5 back and running. And then once well 5 is back running, we will then start picking away at well 6. So we still have backup power for well 4 if we ever were to get in a situation, but we're not a happy utility right now. We got lots going on and we need things to get resolved. So that is why we are not flushing, and we haven't put out a notice about it because we're trying to figure out what the next message is. So is the message we'll be flushing next week, or is the message we will be flushing in 3 weeks? So we're trying to figure out what is actually happening there. I guess this is a utility thing, kind of a construction project thing, but we're still working on, we had to do a interim submittal to the EPA about our sewer project. They do require that we still submit this report, even though they're not there. And then we are anxiously awaiting them doing a budgetary modification to move some of the money that they had for us into construction, from construction into what they call, what did they call it? Not consulting. They call it, well, maybe it is consulting. They have categories for everything. Yeah, it's contracting. So anyway, we're waiting for that. And then once they do that, then I'll submit the final project and we'll finally be closed out, because we're still not closed out from there, even though we have their money. And I guess the last sort of things the guys have been trying to, they finished jetting. They ended up just one of these things where we're having a really bad luck. The jetter ended up breaking down just as they were finishing Main Street. So we're working on repairs of that, and they're moving on to valve exercising. So never a dull moment on the utility side.
I just have one thing, I think. I can't remember if I actually told you guys this last time because I've sort of been hurried the last couple of meetings, so I might have just voiced it out or not. The lead service line grant. I finally got all the checks out to the customers. So after 2 years, we're done. So yeah, they're all very happy. They're all very thankful, and they all said they appreciated Sarah and myself, our work, and they're very excited. So what? All 6. Yeah. But we're ready to go now. If they ever change the requirements at the level that we are able to apply for another grant, we're all set to go. So that's all I really have. Thank you.
Got one question. They approached me about the fire department again. How soon is that something that will take place before winter time?
That was our hope. So we are currently needing to finalize some of the business side of it. And I think Nate was hoping to get through budget before doing that. But yeah, we're hopeful and want to be making a move sooner than the winter, because that's a bad time for anyone to move.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Second period of public comment.
I think you're good, Todd.
I need a motion to adjourn.
This is Seth. I make a motion. We adjourn the meeting.
Cindy, I
AJ, I'll second.
All those in favor saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay. Meeting
Thank you.
over.
All right, thank you both.